There's been another dramatic jump in the number of coronavirus cases across the state, this time by 25%. Contributing to that number are many from the Ruby Princess cruise ship, which docked in Sydney last week. Almost 50 cases have now been identified from that boat, with that number now expected to rise. Hugh Rimmington is live at the Overseas Passenger Terminal at Circular Quay. Hugh, who's at fault here for letting those thousands of people disembark?
Well, Sandra, there's certainly a fair bit of blame shifting going on. We can tell you that the Ruby Princess remains safely offshore. It's no longer in Sydney Harbour. It is off the Central Coast, up around Avoca, we're told, judging by the radars that we're able to watch to see the cruise ship there. And it's not going to be taking too many passengers on board for a while. The position that many people have taken about this is that Border Force let us down. Aren't they the ones who are supposed to be protecting our borders, our airports and ports? But that's certainly not the way the
Getting live video here in the K2 Live Desk. That infected cruise ship that is docked in the port of Oakland in the Bay Area. We're seeing the live footage here overhead. In fact, let's go ahead and show this to you. You're seeing it for yourself. At least 21 confirmed coronavirus cases on board. This is a live look from our ABC sister station KGO. Now, this ship was forced to sit idle off the California coast for days. And get this, guys, local reports say about 2,000 people are still on board. They're waiting to disembark. If you look closely, you can see some of the tents set up ready to take the thousands of people off of this ship. Several hundred were released yesterday, were screened yesterday. Now, it's reported that Americans on board will be transported to military bases in California, Texas, and Georgia. Back to you guys in studio.
All right, Evan, thank you. Let's take a look.
We are going to carefully move through this tonight. Dr. Jen Ashton is here answering your questions, but we begin with ABC's chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, with news coming in on that cruise ship, those tests coming back positive, at least 21 on that ship.
Tonight, nearly 24 hours after those choppers delivered those coronavirus test kits, the results revealing 21 aboard the Grand Princess cruise ship off the California coast have tested positive for coronavirus. 19 are crew members. It was news the passengers had feared all day.
Right now, it's just numbing. It's just trying to process this information and see what our life holds in the next couple of weeks.
Debbie Loftus and her parents among the 2,400 passengers circling about 60 miles off the coast of San Francisco, now confined to their rooms.
I was worried mainly because my parents are elderly. I'm traveling with them. They're from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and my mom has asthma. So yeah, I'm very worried if she would get ill, what might happen.
Tonight, we're learning there are 9 cases of the virus now linked to the ship's previous voyage, including that 71-year-old passenger who died after exhibiting symptoms before getting off the ship 2 weeks ago. This ship haunted by that recent nightmare for passengers of the Diamond Princess off Japan, where thousands were quarantined for weeks, but nearly 1 in 5 people on board wound up infected. Today, outside this San Francisco hospital, they were setting up tents to handle any overflow coronavirus patients. In Seattle, another crisis. Officials there announcing that a team of 30 federal health professionals are on the way to help out at this nursing home where at least 8 residents have died.
Debbie, so we spoke on Friday. At that time, you had very little information about what would happen on the ship. There were 21 people who tested positive out of about 40 some odd who were tested. Vice President Pence is now saying you and other non-California residents will disembark tomorrow. Have you heard that from the captain? Do you know that to be the case?
It'll be either probably tomorrow or the next day. Hopefully not after that right now things are going really slow, but they think they're going to get more efficient in getting people off the boat. They just started taking off Canadian passengers and sick passengers.
Okay, so after you get off, you're going to be quarantined. Have you been told anything about that process, where and when and how long?
We'll be either going to a base in Texas or Georgia, and it will be for 14 more days. I was concerned it would be like a barracks, but it sounds like it's going to be a little bit nicer accommodations, so we're a lot less nervous about where we're going to be going.
Are you aware of any other testing that has been done on the ship? I mean, obviously, we know the close quarters, and obviously the crew working very hard to keep everyone else safe, but they themselves in close quarters, and 19 of the 21 who tested positive were crew members. Are you aware of anybody who has been tested since those tests came back on Friday?
I am not aware of any passengers that have been tested. I have a crew member friend, and she said there are some more crew that are sick.
So have you had any concern? I mean, Debbie, I know your situation is tough, right? You are where you are. You can't leave, but you've been on that ship, I know, for 17 days. Do you worry about, infection even just as you wait to get off because you're stuck in that same place with everyone else?
Well, we're all in our rooms still or out on our balconies. We have plenty of fresh air. We have to wear masks now when anybody knocks on the door. And when we leave the ship, we all be wearing masks. So I think we're pretty safe we're getting to where we're going to be going.
And now your parents, I know, are in their 80s and obviously in the highest risk group when you think about things like coronavirus. Debbie, do you know where they are going next and how are they feeling? I know that they needed to get all their medications and everything to make sure they had enough.
Yes, we're expecting our medications either later this afternoon or tomorrow because ours weren't emergent medical needs. My parents are nervous just because of their age and because of my mother's asthma, but we feel very healthy and we're just praying that we weren't exposed.
And will they be going to the same place that you are going or are you unsure of that? You had mentioned Texas or Georgia.
Right. Well, we're both from Wisconsin, so we assume we're going to be going to the same place. But no, we haven't been told. We did alert passenger services desk to let them know that we are traveling together, and they said that they would do their best.
Good morning. The countdown is definitely on to a 14-day quarantine for any traveler crossing the border from mainland China. That starts this Saturday. As for the cruise ship you mentioned right behind me here, there are about 4,000 people on it, passengers as well as crew. They're stuck on here, unable to get off because at least 3 crew members fell ill. Of course, the fear there is that they have the coronavirus. All at the same time, hundreds of Americans evacuated from Wuhan are now under observation and looking for any signs of sickness.
At least 4 newly arrived American evacuees from Wuhan are now showing signs of sickness. They landed in California Wednesday and are now in isolation. Nearly 350 others are under a public health quarantine, the CDC's first in 50 years. Priscilla Dickey and her daughter are among them.
They're basically going to make sure they're keeping a really good eye on us.
In Japan, 2 U.S. citizens are among at least 20 evacuated from this cruise ship diagnosed with coronavirus. About 3,700 passengers in total are now confined to their cabins for 2 weeks as doctors test each person. Eric Pagan is worried his medication won't last.
I'm going to run out. I have some medicine I take, but I'll probably be good for another 2-3 days.
A developing story on the coronavirus now. 20 passengers on a quarantined cruise ship have tested positive for the virus, including 2 Americans. The ship is docked off the coast of Japan, and CNN's Will Ripley is live near where that ship is docked. What's the latest, Will?
Allison, that number of 20 patients, that's more coronavirus confirmed cases on this cruise ship, the Diamond Princess behind me, than in all of the United States. So imagine if you're one of the 400 plus Americans who are on that ship, aside from the 2 who tested positive, feeling healthy, but you're quarantined on the ship, breathing in the same air, in the same spaces as people who are sick. And, we're talking to people who are on the ship who say they want out. They're hoping that the United States can airlift them out, much like the people who were in Wuhan, China, the Americans that, the U.S. sent in flights to bring them home, because these people feel, frankly, unsafe. They feel like they're being quarantined in a Petri dish. And cruise ships, if you've ever been on one, that it is not a pleasant experience to spend a lot of time in your cabin, even if you have one of those fancy balcony rooms or a room with a window. But there are thousands of people, or at least hundreds of people, who have interior rooms with no windows, and people have not been allowed to leave their cabins now for a couple of days. Now, they've been negotiating with Japanese authorities. Maybe tomorrow they'll be able to go outside wearing masks the whole time and having to stand about 3 feet apart from other people for a few hours as Japanese officials are watching to make sure they don't break the rules. Otherwise, they're all going to have to go back to their rooms. So really, this luxury cruise, people spending thousands of dollars for this vacation. You know, a week ago, they were eating lobster at the buffet. Now they are locked essentially in their small cabins, being served breakfast at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or later by staff members in full protective gear and goggles, eating, you know, what they describe almost like prison food. These are the conditions that these passengers are having to endure right now. And frankly, they expect the number of cases to continue to grow on that ship. It went from 10 to 20. Who knows what tomorrow will bring, John?
And we have a family who's been on that cruise ship since February 21st. They are joining us live via FaceTime now. Jasmine Torres, Chris Grady, and Ryan Ashbaker, thank you so much for being on with us. We appreciate it.
No problem.
So tell me, how did you all learn that there was an outbreak on the ship?
They made an announcement early yesterday morning saying that we were going to be skipping Mexico and headed straight back to San Francisco due to the scare.
What's the tone like there? Do people seem panicked, or does it seem pretty organized and calm right now?
Not at all. It's not panicked at all. Everything's pretty much been going on just like normal. There've been a little bit more precautions, but not very much.
What kind of precautions are they having you take?
Not us, really. They're just more cleaning and less hands-on. Like the staff is trying to pass out the food and not let people touch things as much, and clean the elevators more and things like that. Just more sanitation.
I know the ship is now headed to San Francisco. Have they told you at all what happens when you get there?
Yeah, they told us that they're going to bring in the testing kits through the air, and they're going to test all the people that have been on the ship before this cruise from London, as well as a lot of the staff, and then they'll judge it based on the results from there, whether they're going to test more or not.
And I'm curious, have you noticed anyone who's sick or seen people being quarantined, and how are you three feeling?
We haven't noticed anything. We just found it kind of strange that they're only testing the people that was on before, because they basically were mingling with everybody for the last 2 weeks already. So I'm not really sure how that testing is going to pan out, considering that they've been on the ship with everyone already. But as far as us, I mean, we basically just chose to kind of stay in the room and stay out of the main areas where the people are meeting together.
So you say you've chosen to just hang out in the room. I mean, this is obviously not as important a question, but I'm curious, are you bored? How are you guys passing the time?
Yeah, it's pretty boring. I mean, we understand the severity of it, and I think they're just trying to contain it the best they can and find out what's going on. That's why I kind of agree with the president's decision to close the borders and all that to try to contain it. But on the ship here, I'm not sure how that's going to work.
I saw a little giggle there in the background from your friends. Well, we hope that you guys stay safe, and we hope that you guys find entertaining ways to pass this time, and above all else, that you guys are able to stay healthy through this. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Getting live video here in the K2 Live Desk. That infected cruise ship that is docked in the port of Oakland in the Bay Area. We're seeing the live footage here overhead. In fact, let's go ahead and show this to you. You're seeing it for yourself. At least 21 confirmed coronavirus cases on board. This is a live look from our ABC sister station, KGO. Now, this ship was forced to sit idle off the California coast for days. And get this, guys, local reports say about 2,000 people are still on board. They're waiting to disembark. If you look closely, you can see some of the tents set up ready to take the thousands of people off of this ship. Several hundred were released yesterday, were screened yesterday. Now, it's reported that Americans on board will be transported to military bases in California, Texas, and Georgia. Back to you guys in studio.
All right, Evan, thank you. Let's take a look.
escalation for so many aboard that one cruise ship. In Japan, several hundred Americans just made the journey back to the U.S., and they shared video of their trip exclusively with CNN. CNN's Will Ripley live in Yokohama, Japan, with more. I mean, these planes are not your normal planes. I mean, they're taking extreme measures here, really, to try to keep a lid on this.
Yes, this was not a luxury flight home, Jim, for people who thought they were going to go on a luxury vacation, then found themselves, confined to these cramped cabins for almost 2 weeks. They were told repeatedly that after the quarantine on the cruise ship, they'd be able to go directly home. But then they learned the U.S. government was coming in to evacuate them, but a whole new ordeal was about to begin. Daybreak in Yokohama, Japan, the final day on the Diamond Princess for more than 300 Americans evacuated by the U.S. government.
This is a converted cargo 747, so it has less insulation than a regular passenger jet. So less layers so you can stay warm.
American health officials try to prepare passengers for a long, uncomfortable journey, a journey Carrie Maniscalco from Utah is reluctant to take. She and her husband already endured nearly 2 weeks of quarantine on the cruise ship.
I didn't like that answer.
Now, they're about to do it all over again at a California military base.
They have sent over a dozen emails assuring us that there would not be an additional quarantine. And they just told us that we'd be re-quarantined for 14 more days. I've just lost a whole month of my life.
She's angry at the U.S. government, angry they waited so long to evacuate the American passengers. Others, like Gay Corder from Florida, are grateful.
And I want to go somewhere where I can feel safe. And I just want to thank President Trump and the U.S. government. There's been a lot of silence on this, and now we know the silence has been putting together a brilliant plan.
Executing that plan will take nearly 10 hours, even though the airport is just a 20-minute drive from the ship.
The buses are starting to line up.
Once they get on, there's no getting off, not even to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, the best I can do is go find out where a bathroom is. Go find out.
As the hours drag on, this health worker tries to break the tension.
What do you call a witch on the beach? A sandwich.
There you go. Passengers are beginning to feel like the joke is on them.
We're just waiting. I don't really know what we're waiting for, but we are waiting indefinitely.
Finally, they're allowed off the bus.
Woohoo! Ooh, yeah. Yes!
And onto the tarmac, boarding 2 converted 747 cargo planes. The cabin best described as bare bones. No windows, makeshift toilets, temporary seats.
This is first class, baby. First class.
Lack of luxury aside, Maniscalco feels anxious.
It's not good conditions. No one on here has had their temperature taken by the federal government or any government for that matter. So we're all in really closed, tight quarters. Everybody's sitting next to each other. I have a girl sitting here in just a minute. It seems dangerous and not safe.
The U.S. government says they are safe, even though 14 passengers who tested positive for coronavirus are allowed on the flight, all showing no symptoms. They're put in a specialized containment area, isolated from the other passengers. Just after daybreak, both planes finally take off. A long, sleepless night, followed by a 10-hour flight. Now they've arrived in California and Texas. One ordeal ends, another begins. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention acknowledges that people on the Diamond Princess cruise ship do face a higher risk of becoming infected. And just in the last 24 hours, 169 new confirmed cases on the ship, including those 99 cases we learned about overnight. So for all the discomfort, I'm sure a lot of those Americans are grateful to be back in their home country and off that ship.
Understood, Will. Thank you very much for all of your reporting. Joining us now are Blake Corder and Ashley Rhodes Corder. Their parents, Philip and Gay Corder, were on board that quarantine cruise ship, and they have just landed in Texas. Blake, I know these past couple of weeks have been very stressful for you and your family. Have you talked to your parents yet?
I've not talked to them yet this morning. We did receive a text from them about an hour and a half ago with some new images. It sounds like they slept fine, they traveled fine, and they're looking forward to their new temporary home in Texas.
Ashley, one of the big headlines this morning is that of those 300 Americans who've been evacuated, here is a picture we have of your parents. They look well, for given the conditions, but the big headline is that of the 300 passengers who were quarantined on that ship and who have now been evacuated, the officials thought they were all virus-free when they put them on that plane. But then when they tested some of them, and I think we might even have some pictures of their throats being swabbed, 14 tested positive for the virus. Do you know if your parents are two of those 14?
So far, well, sorry, Blake. I have been texting with my mom this morning. Maybe it's like a mother-daughter mini freak out. But so far, they are feeling healthy. They've been testing negative, regular temperatures, and this is an incredibly stressful situation that is being handled as best as it can. And even though conditions may not be ideal, she sees one too many porta potties than she's accustomed to, but they realize that they're in the best possible place to be receiving the care that they and the others need. And now we hope that the same can be said for everyone else aboard that ship, because the numbers are increasing. They're increasing rapidly, and we are tremendously grateful that our parents are now back on U.S. soil, receiving all of the care and medications and things that they'll need to hopefully remain healthy.
And in fact, I mean, I know that your mom, I guess, did have some, or maybe your dad did have some medical challenges, needed medication, then was quarantined on the ship, didn't have enough medication for that time. So I can only imagine how stressful these past couple weeks have been for you. Blake, we just heard, our reporter just showed another woman who was one of the evacuees, another American. She was crying. I mean, she is so disappointed that they're going to have to be quarantined for longer. She wasn't expecting that. No one was. She's really feels so, like she's lost a month of her life. How are your parents feeling about being quarantined now?
I think they're feeling this tremendous responsibility to keep, as dramatic as it may sound, the American people safe. They have no intention on spreading this virus. They want to ensure that they are healthy. This has not been ideal. One of the more frightening components of their quarantine was that when the quarantine was announced, they knew they didn't have enough medication, including my mother's insulin. We had to work as a family and utilize family friends and very grassroots efforts to work with the local hospital to send them a package of medication and masks and insulin. And so the people that remain aboard, many of them still don't have life-saving critical meds. And so I think because of the alternative, they're very grateful to be here, to be able to have access to what they're going to need. And they want to be sure that they're healthy. They have grandchildren. We call ourselves the Quarter 15. My brothers and I all have families. They don't want anyone to get sick. They want to figure out what's going on just as much as everyone, and this is the place for them to do so, hopefully safely. It's not ideal, but they know that this is the responsible choice for the protection of thousands of others. And if that means my parents using a porta potty a little longer than they had hoped, then they're willing to do that and abide by the rules.
Yeah, that makes perfect.
Well, soon the World Health Organization could decide whether or not they will declare the coronavirus a global health emergency. This is the White House announces the creation of a task force here in the U.S. to deal with the threat of the virus in this country. The U.S. also planning additional evacuation flights next week for the Americans in the Chinese city, Wuhan province, at the center of the outbreak.
Yeah, a remarkable international reaction here. The number of cases in mainland China is at 7,700 now, and at least 170 people have now died from the virus. And this morning, a cruise ship with more than 6,000 people is quarantined off the coast of Italy. This over fears that 2 passengers on that ship may have been infected with the deadly virus. CNN's Will Ripley joins us now from Hong Kong. So Will, what more do we know about evacuations of Americans, when they're going to get back to the U.S., and any concerns about cases among that group?
There are so many concerns among so many people right now, Jim, and they're working as quickly as they can to get those the remaining Americans evacuated from Wuhan. But obviously, it's a very complex operation, not just working with Chinese authorities, but also figuring out where these people will go and how long they will stay in effectively quarantine to make sure that they don't have any symptoms, given the fact that health officials are saying that you could have this virus for 2 weeks before you show any symptoms and potentially